A to Z Mysteries, Book Number 14, The Ninth Nugget, by Ron Roy. Chapter 1. Dink, Josh, and Ruth Rose watched the small airplane rise into the late afternoon sky. They'd just arrived in Bozeman, Montana, for a week's vacation at the Western Wheat Dude Ranch. As the kids waited outside the airport for their ride, the sky turned purple. The sun slipped slowly behind the mountains. "What time is it?" Josh asked. "They said someone would pick us up at 5 o'clock. Ruth Rose checked her watch. "It's 20 past, she said. Dink shielded his eyes against the setting sun. "This might be him," he said. A dusty station wagon pulled up and stopped. A lanky, smiling guy swung out of the driver's seat. "Are you the kids from Connecticut?" he asked. Dink nodded. "Are you from Wheat Ranch?" "You betcha, and welcome to Montana," the man said. "Sorry I'm late. I'm Judd Wheat." "I'm Dink, and these are my friends Josh and Ruth Rose," Dink said. Judd was long-legged and looked about 20 years old. He wore jeans, a western shirt, and scuffed cowboy boots. "Let me get your stuff," Judd said. He grabbed the kids' backpacks and slung them into the car through a rear window. "Hop in and let's ride," he said. Ruth Rose and Josh rode up front with Judd. Dink sat behind them with the backpacks, a jumble of harnesses, and a saddle. "What's that smell?" Josh asked. Judd laughed. "Some of it's horse, some of it's leather, and the rest is me," he said as he pulled onto the main road. Only a few other cars and trucks shared the country road. Through his window, Dink saw plenty of flat land and millions of cows behind neat fences. "You kids looking forward to riding horses this week?" Judd asked. I never rode a horse before," Josh said. "No problem," Judd said. "Most of our guests haven't. I'll show you all you needed to know." "What do you do at the ranch?" Ruth Rose asked Judd. "A little of everything, miss," he answered. "My folks owned the place, and I grew up there. I was supposed to go back to college this fall, but I have to stay on to help out. The ranch isn't earning much money these days." "What are you going to college for?" asked Dink. "I want to be a teacher," Judd said. "I'd rather spend my days with kids than cows." Judd pulled up in front of a gas station. "Gotta fill up," he said, stepping out of the car. "I'll just be a minute." The kids watched as Judd pumped gas into the wagon. Then he loped toward the cashier's window, reaching into his back pocket for his wallet. "I hope he brings back a few candy bars," Josh said. "I'm starving." Dink laughed. "After eating about 20 bags of peanuts on the plane?" Judd stomped back to the car and flung himself into the driver's seat. "Can you beat that?" he said. "I go into my wallet to pay and it's totally empty. I'm almost positive I had 2 20s in there this afternoon." Judd shook his head, then grinned. "Well, good thing I had my credit card, otherwise we'd be walking." Judd drove through more countryside. Dink had never seen so much land. He rolled down his window and felt a hot, dry breeze. "Look, a hawk!" Josh suddenly yelled. "He's looking for a nice fat mouse for his supper," Judd said. Just then, Josh's stomach let out a loud growl. "Someone else is hungry," Judd said, grinning. "We'll be there in a few minutes. How'd you kids happen to pick up our dude ranch?" "We didn't pick it," Dink answered. "A friend of ours gave us this trip as a gift." Judd grinned into the rear-view mirror. "Nice friend," he said. "His lottery ticket was stolen, and we got it back for him," Ruth Rose explained. "You mean the ticket was a winner?" asked Judd. "Yeah," Josh added. "He got $7 million. Judd whistled. $7,000 would help the ranch, he said. Minutes later, he turned through a gate into a dirt driveway. A sign hanging over the gate said, Wheat Ranch. Straight ahead was a red barn and corral. To the left, Dink saw a large white house. Behind it was a pond surrounded by trees and cabins. Ducks and chickens pecked in the grass bordering the driveway. This is so beautiful, Ruth Rose said. Can I feed the chickens? Sure can, Missy, Jed said. He stopped in front of the house. On the porch sat a man and a woman in two wooden rocking chairs. The man had white hair and looked like an older version of Jed. The woman had black hair turning gray. They both wore boots, jeans, and flannel shirts. Their tanned faces were covered with smile wrinkles. Those are my folks, Jed said. Everyone calls them Ma and Pa. Jed's parents hurried down the porch steps. Welcome to Wheat Ranch, Ma Wheat said. You must be Dink, Josh, and Ruth Rose. Howdy, said Pa Wheat. Just then the screen door banged open. A stout woman wearing a backwards baseball cap strode onto the porch. Over her jeans and western shirt, she wore a long white apron. And that's Lulu, the best cook in Montana, Jed said as he dumped the kids' backpacks onto the porch. Lulu smiled at the kids. They feed you anything on the plane? She asked. Just peanuts, Josh said. I'm starving. Supper will be ready in 15 minutes. Listen for the bell, Lulu said, pointing at an iron triangle hanging from the porch roof. I'll take you to your cabin, a deep voice said. Dink, Josh, and Ruth Rose whipped around. A man had walked up behind them. Wild hair poked out from under a sweat-stained cowboy hat. His skin looked like wrinkled leather. I'm Thumbs, the man said. As he reached for the kids' backpacks, Dink saw that one of the man's thumbs was missing. Chapter 2. The kids followed Thumbs down to a narrow path lined with stones. The path led to 3 small cabins. Behind the cabins, the sun sparkled off the pond. Dink noticed other cabins farther along the path. Who's in those? He asked. They're all empty except one, Thumbs grumbled. He stopped in front of the middle cabin. This here's yours. There's a lady in that one, Thumbs said, nodding at the cabin to their right. Some New York feller in the other. Married couple got one of those across the pond. They were log cabins with chimneys and narrow front porches. There were windows on the sides and in front, where they framed the door. Ma Wheat'll give you extra blankets if it turns cold, Thumbs said, clumping up the steps with the backpacks. You'll find towels in the bathroom. He nodded at the kids, then clumped off the porch and headed back along the path. That guy creeps me out, Josh said. What do you think happened to his thumb? Maybe a bear bit it off, Dink said, winking at Ruth Rose. Could have been a mountain lion, Ruth Rose added, trying not to laugh. Josh snorted. Don't try to scare me, he said. There's nothing out here but chickens and ducks. The kids carried their backpacks into the cabin. A set of bunk beds stood against the far wall, and a single bed was opposite the bunks. A stone fireplace nestled between the bunk beds and a small bathroom. The only other furnishings were a braided rug, a few chairs, and a table. I want to live here forever, Ruth Rose said. She tossed her backpack on the single bed and looked out her window at the barn. I've got upper, Josh said, slinging his pack onto the top bunk. Dink set his pack on the bunk beneath it as loud clanging came from the main house. Food at last, Josh said. They ran out of the cabin, nearly colliding with a skinny, bearded man. Whoa, the man said, smiling. No need to rush. There's plenty of food. You must be the newcomers. We just got here, Dink said. I'm Ed Getz, the man said. I came in yesterday from New York. He wiggled his fingers at the kids. I'm a magician. I'm trying to be an actor, but there's not much work. Ed Getz had long arms, tapered hands, and thin fingers. Cool, Josh said. Can you do tricks? Ed nodded. I'll show you some later. They walked to the main house, then into the dining room. A moose head hung over a wide fireplace. Lassos, spurs, saddle blankets, and bridles decorated the walls. In front of the fireplace stood a long table and benches. Judd, Thumbs, and 3 others were already seated. Lou was placing food on the table. Ma and Pa Wheat came out of the kitchen. Ma said, Hi, kids, take a seat. Pa tapped a spoon against a glass. Say howdy to Dink, Josh, and Ruth Rose from Connecticut, he said. A woman wearing a western shirt and jeans said, Hello, I'm Fiona Nippet. And where's Seth and Bonnie Clyde? Said a man sitting next to a pretty woman with long blonde hair. Lulu bustled out of the kitchen carrying a heavy tray of food. Eat while it's hot, she said. What you don't eat now is leftovers tomorrow. Everyone began passing platters of fried chicken, mashed potatoes, and steaming vegetables. With 12 people at the table, it got pretty noisy. The kids learned that Fiona was a nurse from Chicago. The Clydes had just gotten married in Florida and decided to spend their honeymoon at a dude ranch. Only Thumbs didn't join in the dinner table chatter. While everyone else talked, he just ate. For dessert, Lulu served apple pie with ice cream on top. By the end of the meal, they were all rubbing their stomachs. Pa stood up. It's almost dark. Judd'll build us a bonfire out back, and unless I miss my guess, Thumbs will tell you about the grizzly bear that roams these parts. Josh had a look at Thumbs. Are there really grizzlies here? He asked. For an answer, Thumbs winked and held up his hand with the missing thumb. Everyone helped carry stuff into the kitchen. When the table was cleared off, the kids went outside and walked down the path. They found Judd and Thumbs arranging firewood inside a circle of tree stumps. It had grown almost completely dark. Dink saw a few fireflies in the bushes near the pond. Have a seat, Judd told the kids, motioning toward the stumps. They were joined by Fiona, Ed, and the Clydes. Thumbs struck a match on his belt buckle. He knelt and lit some dry pine needles under the branches, and soon the wood caught. The flames cast each face around the fire into shadow. Is this great or what? Josh said. Man, I wish I could stay here longer than a week. Me too, Dink said. Then Ma, Pa, and Lulu came outside. Got something to tell us, Thumbs? Pa asked. Everyone looked at Thumbs. The reflection from the flames made his eyes appear red under his hat brim. He began to speak in a hoarse whisper. I'll never forget that night, Thumbs said. It was a dry summer. There was a lightning storm, and one of the strikes caused a fire. The woods and the hills began to burn. We was sitting here just like now. Suddenly, a bear cub came running out of the trees. It was a young one, just a bitty thing. You could tell it had been burned. It was whimpering like in pain. We caught the cub, took it inside. Lulu put some butter on the burns. Thumbs paused. The only sound was wood crackling in the fire. Dink glanced over at Josh, sitting next to Ruth Rose. Josh's mouth and eyes were wide open. What happened to the cub? Ruth Rose asked. Thumbs's red eyes turned to Ruth Rose. Next morning we took the poor critter to the vet's office, he continued. When the little thing was all healed up, the vet sent it to a zoo someplace in California. Good, Josh said. Thumbs swung his gaze back at Josh. Bad, he said. The mama grizzly came later that night. She tore through here howling for her young'un. Probably weighed 700 pounds, that grizzly did. Smashed cabin doors, ripped a hole in the barn, sent us all a hidin' down in Lulu's root cellar. Did she ever come back? Josh asked. Thumbs let out a laugh that was more like a cackle. Sonny, that grizzly pays us a visit at least 2-3 times every summer. She tears through here like a hairy tornado, destroying nearly everything in her path. Thumbs looked at his thumbless hand. That poor mama wants her baby back. It's been 2 years now, and she still comes around looking for it. Thumbs placed the thumbless hand on Josh's shoulder. That cub would be just about your size, Sonny, he added, then walked into the night.